Dear students, in this module, we will try to cover the international experiences in aging at policy and programmatic responses and also the rights of the elderly as specified by the United Nations. It is very important that the learning objectives in this module will be the relevance of international experiences in aging policy and programs, about rights of the elderly, the civil and political rights of older persons, Declaration of Rights of the Elderly program. What is the relevance of understanding the international experiences in aging policy and programs, especially when we talk about the initiatives for elderly care in India? The emphasis on policies as they exist, we need to know that there are no critical comments on the impact and suitably for specific countries, not enough to have priorities and policy initiatives. There are adequate resources for implementation which is required, and political will is also very important, essential. Selection of 12 countries made in one of the United Nations Population Fund paper is to understand the similar context in which the various socio-cultural, traditional, modern mix and international factors which influence policy and program responses have been described. The countries selected are China, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, which have in greater detail have been emphasized given the special priority to older persons and age-related issues. A comprehensive and integrated innovative plans for policy exists, but that despite differences in demographic and epidemiological transition, the stages of development, healthcare, economic and political ideologies. For other 7 countries, for instance, countries like Bangladesh, Cambodia, Korea, Hong Kong, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and each of these with respect to the policy initiatives that are relevant for India have also been attempted. The emphasis on action with long-term perspective, taking care of present and future generations, are the highlight of these policies. The family, which is regarded as the main provider of care and financial support to older persons, thus provisions for strengthening family support care and incentives, benefits, concessions are also highlighted. There is a shift from welfare to developmental orientation over a period of time. Also, there is a shift towards health promotion, illness prevention, supported in parallel with a firm system of health care, as well as family-based services and community rehabilitation care. What are the common threads when we are talking about the various policies and schemes? As we all know that the development of policies and programs in line with the priority direction of Macau and MIPWA, which has emphasized on older persons and development, advancing health and well-being into old age, and ensuring enabling and supportive environments for older persons, is another important aspect where most of these countries have laid emphasis on critically analyzing with respect to these efforts. Age-related issues are being mainstreamed into national development strategies. Countries trying to implement the programs outlined effectively with the sanction of funds, recruiting functionaries, and greater outreach action, high-level responsibility. What are the similar constraints when we are talking about various programs and schemes in these countries? Organizational resource limitations in meeting the challenges of old age security system, adjusting the medical care security system and service systems to meet the medical and social needs of the huge, rapidly growing older population, in raising ethical construction of respecting older people and forming social environment for supporting and helping the seniors. What are the different countries' responses and the specific models of policies and programs that have been adopted in some of these countries? For instance, in the case of China, it has been emphasized that aging issues are into the overall strategy of national economy and social development, promoting affordable medical care and services for older people, especially in rural and remote areas, formulation of laws, regulations and policies to protect older people, establishing committees on aging, a supervision and evaluation systems to check implementation, improving basic data on older people, they are all emphasized in the policy laid down by the China. The other country, for instance, Japan, the highlights are there is a basic law and measures for an aging society, the responsibility on central and local governments for formulating measures to address the problems of an aging society, which is starting earlier. The Aging Society Policy Council, headed by the Prime Minister and its members of all cabinet ministers. Cross-sectoral framework for bettering quality of life of older people. Age-friendly programs emphasizing on prevention, use of research for developing appropriate services. In the case of a country like Malaysia, there are 6 subcommittees of National Senior Citizens Policy Technical Committees to address different concerns of the elderly. There are specific programs to increase community participation of older people and involved in planning for themselves. Also, improving access to knowledge, education and training for better incomes in later years. In special attention on healthcare programs and independent living, barrier-free environment are laid down by the policy framework of Malaysia. In the case of Singapore, emphasis was on multifaceted, the dynamic policy response has been figured. There is an integrated interministerial action with the NGOs and seniors for multidisciplinary approaches in addressing the needs of older people. There are also adequate allocation of funds for supporting families as first line of care, community as second line, and state as third, each playing its part to enable older people to remain physically, mentally, and socially active, which we can consider as a holistic and coordinated approach. In the case of Thailand, there are different stages that needs of the elderly have been specified. Currently, the second national plan on older persons in the period of 2002 to 21 have been emphasized. There exists master plan for integrated action, a strategic framework covering 5 aspects like quality aging, promotion of well-being, social security, development of managed systems and personnel, research, monitoring and evaluation of second plan. Furthermore, there are a set of indicators to appraise implementation of these programs and schemes. There is a strong commitment of the government of Thailand, which has been emphasized in the policy document. In the case of India, what are its recommendations? We can bring it out from these comparisons. There is a strengthening of grassroots levels, state machinery, central government functionings in terms of allocation of funds, defined roles and interlinkages have to be emphasized. Make them responsible, transparent, accountable and creditable. Establish better laws, regulations and monitoring systems, effective implementation strategies. There is a need to increase and recognize socio-economic value of 60 plus and enhance their contributions and image. Need to invest in age-friendly infrastructures and a continuum of services and research to guide and assess. There is a need to create an atmosphere for enjoying later years across gender, socio-economic groups and locations, for instance, whether it is rural or urban. When we talk about rich and poor countries, they are alike or currently they are experiencing extraordinary demographic changes with respect to the rising number of older persons in their populations as brought out by the United Nations in different points of time. Over the next 4 decades, the population over age 60, especially in developed countries, is projected at double, whereas in the case of developing countries, it is expected to be triple, reaching a staggering of 1.6 billion elderly by 2050. These changes will definitely create a new set of challenges that should be dealt with coherently, including an acute need for redistribution of resources, for access to justice, participation in political and social life, social security, and healthcare. Furthermore, states, as primary protectors of human rights, will definitely face challenges related to upholding human rights in the new demographic landscape. If we look at the Second World Assembly on Aging, United Nations 2009, describes the problem on these lines. An absence of nuanced, targeted, and comprehensive approaches towards the right of older persons leave them with chronic poverty, untreated illness, homelessness or inadequate shelter, violence and abuse, lack of education, low-paying jobs, ineffective legal protection, vulnerability, exclusion, and isolation. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights directly makes reference to the rights of elderly in Article 25(1)(27). The reference provides that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. The UN emphasized as to bring all nations of the world together to work for peace and development based on the principles of justice, human dignity, and well-being of all people. It is structured in such a way that states may balance global interdependence and national interests when addressing international problems. Basic civil and political human rights have been considered as utmost importance for the protection and empowerment of older persons. These rights are generally considered to be immediately enforceable, and older persons are able to have legal claims brought out their behalf to ensure full recognition of such rights. Furthermore, older persons are considered to be in circumstances, especially when they are vulnerable. Let us discuss in detail what are the various civil and political rights of older persons. Number 1, the right to recognition before the law. While it is important to recognize the need to protect older persons from an economic and social perspective, such efforts must be firmly grounded on the legal recognition that older persons have the inherent and inalienable right to a dignified life free from discrimination. Several human rights treaties have provisions on the right to be recognized before the law. Such legal dimension includes equality under the law, equal access to justice, and due process. The second is the right to freedom from violence. Several human rights treaties recognize the human rights to life, liberty, and security of persons. In this legal framework, older persons have the right to be free from all forms of abuse, whether it is physical, emotional, or financial, among others, as well as the right to enjoy the state's protection from all forms of exploitation and marginalization. The third one is the right to equality and non-discrimination. Every human has inalienable rights regardless of their age. However, the non-discrimination clauses in international law rarely specify age as a prohibited ground for discrimination. While human rights laws prohibits discrimination on several grounds, age would be argued to be included in the phrase and other status. Some of this is a result of ageism. On definition of ageism, it is a systematic stereotyping and discrimination against persons because they are old. Sometimes ageism is compared to sexism or racism because it discriminates against all members of a particular group. Next is the right to freedom from cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. In the second working session of the UN Open-Ended Working Group on Aging held on August 2011, the chair of the United Nations Committee Against Torture emphasized that the definition of torture takes into account the particular circumstances of an individual, including their health conditions and age. It is the duty of the states to investigate and punish any conduct that can amount to inhuman or degrading treatment, conducting in places like psychiatric institutions or prisons where older persons may not be able to take action to protect themselves. The next is the right to life. According to Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Similarly, Article 6 of the ICCPR states that every person has the inherent right to life, protected by law, and shall not be arbitrarily deprived of life. The International Convention on Civil and Political Rights does not restrict capital punishment with respect to older persons. The right to liberty and security. Pursuant to Article 9 of the ICCPR, everyone has the right to liberty and security. No one shall be deprived of his liberty except on such grounds and in accordance with such procedures as are established by law, and arbitrary arrest or detention is prohibited. The ICCPR establishes that persons deprived of their liberty should be treated with humanity and with respect for the inherent dignity of the human person. The right to respect for home and family. General human rights law includes a number of provisions for the environment of the home and family. Article 23 of ICCPR establishes that the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection, including that the right of men and women of marriageable age to marry and to found a family shall be recognized. States are expected to take appropriate steps to ensure equality of rights and responsibilities of spouses as to marriage, during marriage, and at its dissolution. The other right is to information, association, and participation. Many international human rights instruments embody the guarantee to information, association, and participation by preserving rights to expression, association, and participation in cultural life as Article 15 of the ICESCR. Information is often not available in a form that is suitable and accessible to older people, which can make meaningful participation in society impossible. What are the declarations of the rights of the elderly as approved by the United Nations on 19th December 1991? Independence. Older persons should have access to adequate food, water, shelter, clothing, and health care through the provision of income, family, and community support and self-help. That is why a lot of emphasis is to see that we need to promote independence among the elderly. Given the mindset of the young members and also the elderly in developing countries like India feel that after attaining 60 plus, it is the time to depend on others, or it is not to involve in productive or active way of life in other activities of the regular life. In that sense, independence is very important, which will greatly help in their active involvement and also engagement with the regular activities of the society. The next declaration of the rights of the elderly is their participation. Older persons should remain integrated in society, participate actively in the formulation and implementation of policies which directly affects their well-being and share their knowledge and skills with the younger generations. In this context, if we want to build an integrated society where all different age groups can come together, and that way there should be a harmony that prevails, so that there is a good intergenerational bonds can be expected. In that sense, participation is very important, which we need to enhance among the elderly in our society. The third declaration is the care. Older persons should benefit from family and community care and protection in accordance with each society's system of cultural values and have access to healthcare to help them to maintain or regain the optimum level of physical, mental and emotional well-being and to prevent or delay the onset of illness. In that sense, care issues are so complex that given the high population aging, issues related to care is increasingly coming up, and in this context, issues of caregivers plays a very important role because both informal and formal caregivers are increasingly seen to have a high relevance when we are talking about quality of life of elderly. The other is with regard to self-fulfillment. Older persons should be able to pursue opportunities for the full development of their potential. Older persons should have access to the educational, cultural, spiritual and recreational resources of society. In that, we should see that they are actively involved and they contribute with full potential of their abilities. That is essential so that they also can act as a good human resource group given their skills and given their expertise that exists with all their years of experience. It will be value added to the society, and in that way they become a partners in the development process. The other aspect is the dignity. Older persons should be able to live in dignity and security and be free of exploitation and physical or mental abuse. This is one of the important aspects again, because when we are talking about human rights angle, dignity plays an important role. They should feel that they have a space in the society and they also should have a free from exploitation and abuse. This is another important aspect which we need to emphasize in our programs. In conclusion, what this clearly reflects on is that efforts both at national and international levels are ongoing. While we talk about developed countries, there is a fair understanding of issues, and also over a period the systems are well placed so that these societies are good enough in terms of placing the adequate resources and also adequate platforms where the elderly can fulfill their obligation, fulfill their involvement, and in that way we can see that their independency, their dignity are taken care of. Whereas in the case of developing countries, given the population aging that is coming up recently and also expected to grow phenomenally, the population aging in developing countries needs special attention, especially when we are talking about their issues related to human rights point of view. So, there is a very clear-cut rights approach that is needed, and furthermore creating awareness in the young minds and also to promote value education in our schooling and colleges, and furthermore environment that requires where when they are involved in a external environment while moving out of the home or in the external aspects of their involvement, it is furthermore required that we need to have a lot of sensitization programs so that we can minimize ageism in the society, and in that way the elderly can experience good quality of life. What it clearly indicates that there are some good practices especially in policy frameworks, the program frameworks that are there in some of the countries which have tested categories of involvement with respect to various programs. What we require is adopting those suitable policies and schemes so that if we can also approach in that spirit in taking care of our elderly, there will be a positiveness among them so that when they contribute for their own abilities and their self-fulfillment, then we can say that we are able to take care of our elderly with due care, and also we can promote intergenerational bonds among them. What is furthermore required is that the United Nations are continuously in terms of fulfilling the various aspects in creating a larger awareness among the member countries, whether it is through First World Assembly on Aging or in the Second World Assembly on Aging, and through MIPOA reviews, which clearly fulfills that UN has a dominant role to play in promoting the elderly care, and also to specify that international efforts are there to support individual countries, and that's why their voices can be heard at various platforms. That is why United Nations has a clear-cut recognition of how best we can recognize the needs of the elderly as a separate category of age group, so that UN's slogan that we have to create an age-integrated society is the need of the hour. We will continue to make efforts in that direction.